This was a big year for iPad software, not so much for hardware. But I want to take a look at what we got this year, but what I'm hoping and kind of expecting we get next year. This video is sponsored by Tessian and their 9-in-1 charging station. Let's start off with iPad software. This was a big year for iPad software, and I got a lot of what I've been asking for. I actually have a document in my notes app called Stuff I Want from Apple. And, as stuff gets, checked off, I just delete it. And I've deleted quite a bit out of that document this year. The first thing we got was a huge, the biggest welcome surprise ever, because it's literally the thing I've been asking for the longest when it comes to the iPad and just Apple in general. But it was Final Cut for the iPad. So excited. I got to go down to LA for the announcement and got to play with it hands-on before it was ever out. It was the coolest experience because I got to talk to the Final Cut team and things like that. And then literally last week, I was in LA at Apple's Final Cut Creative Summit, and I got to speak on day one about Final Cut Pro for the iPad to some of the world's best Final Cut editors. It was a huge honor. So the fact that this came out this year, and I've gotten to go really deep with it. In fact, I'm no longer using a Mac at all. I know, after I had some issues with LumaFusion, I went to the Mac to edit videos, but now that Final Cut's here, I'm all back in on the iPad. No more Mac for me. Along with Final Cut came Logic. I'm not a huge Logic person. I can't make music. I'm not that kind of talented person. But when I was down in LA for the announcement of Final Cut, there was also the announcement for Logic. Got to talk to some people that actually use Logic and got to, make projects on Logic for the iPad. And they seemed really impressed with it. And then if we fast forward to June, we got WWDC and Stage Manager was fixed. So excited. Stage Manager got some huge fixes. The ability to, put windows where you want and not have them fight you, overlap windows, shift click to add stuff to the current stage. Lots of changes. I covered it all in my iPadOS 17 walkthrough. I'm not going to rehash it, but really excited about those. Now I'm ready to see, okay, we've got the base of Stage Manager resolved. Let's keep building on this, because while the base of Stage Manager is great, it's not finalized, but we'll get to that in a second. Then there was Spotlight changes, and I love Spotlight. I use Spotlight so much. App shortcuts are really cool, but the big thing for me was running shortcuts from Spotlight is now fixed. So previous versions, if you ran a shortcut with something like the ask for input action, if you ran it from Spotlight, it would run the shortcut, it'd get to the ask for input, and if you started typing, it would type in Spotlight in the background, even though the ask for input was in the foreground. They fixed that. It's good. You can now run shortcuts. Interactive widgets was also really exciting. This isn't just iPad exclusive. This is also on the iPhone as well, but it is really nice to be able to, check a task off on a task manager, hit play to start some music, all sorts of different things. And then the lock screen as well. So the iPad got the lock screen features the iPhone got the previous years. I'm still not entirely sure how useful these are. I'd love to hear from you all if you find them useful. But for me, since the iPad doesn't have an always-on screen, and when I sit down on my iPad, I just, hit the space bar, wake it up, hit the space bar again, and it goes right to the home screen. I don't think about having to, look at the home screen and stuff like that. This video is sponsored by Tessian and their 9-in-1 charging station. This is a 65-watt charging station. It has full GAN charging, so you're topping off your devices as fast as you can. It has 9 ports total, 2 USB-C ports. The USB-C ports can maintain a maximum power output of 65 watts. 4 USB-A ports for compatibility. The USB-A ports can even maintain a maximum power output of 45 watts, and 3 standard outlets so you can plug anything in. Something I really like about this is it's small, so it doesn't take up a lot of space on your desk, nightstand, table, kitchen counter, wherever you want to put it. Being this size also means you could throw it in your backpack and take it with you, and this could just be your travel charger. When you're in a hotel, you can plug it in, charge up your iPad, phone, watch, AirPods, all of that different stuff. On the bottom, there are anti-slip pads, so it doesn't move around when you're plugging or unplugging devices. And because it uses gallium nitrate materials, it has better heat disbursement performance. And it can even function in high heat environments. The 9-in-1 charger has built-in fast charging technology, integrated with an internal proxy charging technology that detects each port and outputs 5 volts at 4 amps, 20 watts maximum power. This way, all the devices you are plugging in are being charged as fast as possible. This is key for me so I can quickly get to work. Personally, I've been using this as a charging station on a table that I have here in my office, just right over there. I've been using this for whenever I'm filming videos or, when I finish up my day, I plug in all my devices there. So when I come into the office the next morning, I know everything is topped up, camera batteries, iPad mini, headphones, whatever. I also use it while I'm filming to charge up any accessories I might have just finished up with. This is a really cool charging station. I'm going to put a link in the description below to where you can go check out the 9-in-1 charging station. My thanks to Tessian for sponsoring this video. Like I mentioned, I do have a document called Stuff I Want from Apple, and this is all the wish list features. And I have it broken up into different categories, but the biggest, obviously, is the iPad. The big thing that I really want to see, and the thing that's kind of making me question not using a Mac anymore, is the lack of multi-stream audio support. So I don't have a podcast anymore, but I guest on quite a few podcasts. And when you record a podcast, you have the call with the people that are on the podcast. It's Zoom, Skype, whatever. You have the call, but everyone needs to be able to record their local audio track. Now, there's a bunch of workarounds with the iPad that requires really expensive hardware that you can kind of do this with, but it's annoying. The iPad really needs the ability to have that call and be able to record your local audio track. And on top of that, really record the audio call, like the phone call, the WebEx call, the Zoom call, whatever. Record that as well. So that's where multi-stream audio comes in. I mentioned earlier, I'm really happy with where Stage Manager's at, but I do not feel it is done by any sense of the means. The big thing I want to see is clamshell mode, so be able to plug it into a monitor, close the iPad up, and not have to worry about the iPad screen. Now, there's a bunch of things that'll need to be added to this, so right now on the actual external monitor, you can't get to Notification Center, you can't get to Control Center, there's no widgets, even the volume indicator is on the iPad screen, not on the external monitor screen. So there's a lot of things that need to come over to that external monitor screen before we can get just pure clamshell mode. No more 4-app window limit in Stage Manager. I hate this. I hit that limitation all the time. I do not think that limitation needs to be there. I don't think it's a technical reason. I think it's like, hey, the iPad screen's kind of small. Let's not garbage it up with a bunch of different windows kind of thing. I would like a setting to change the default behavior. So right now, if you are in Stage Manager and you have an app open and you tap another app, it'll jump to a different stage. I would love a setting that changes the behavior to where if you tap an app while you're in a stage, it just adds it to the current stage. And then you can shift click on an app to open it in a new stage. I would love that setting change. This one comes from my friend Chance Miller of 9to5Mac. The ability to pin apps in Stage Manager, so they always stay open even if you're switching stages. They're always there. I think that would be really cool. It would probably need to pair with removing the 4-window limit thing. But most importantly, and if they just do this one thing in iPadOS 18, I will call it a victory. Get rid of that stupid keyboard bar down at the bottom. We don't need it. There's keyboard shortcuts for everything in that keyboard bar. There's keyboard. So if there is something that you use, just hold down Command or hold down Globe, and you will find the keyboard shortcut to do that. It's not needed at all. And it just covers up UI. It covers up buttons. It covers up the ability, like in Discord, it'll cover up text you're writing. It's a terrible, terrible thing that does not need to exist anymore. Now, this one's a little bit of a ballpark thing. And no, I do not want to hear just use a Mac because I don't want to use a Mac. But I would like a menu bar on the iPad. And hear me out. So on the iPad, if you hold down the Command key, you see basically the menu bar already. You see a list of all the keyboard shortcuts and categorized just like you would on a Mac. So take that, make it an actual menu bar, because you can select those things already in that keyboard shortcut menu, and it'll run those things. So take that, make it a permanent menu bar, but then you can add things like multitasking options up there, the ability to trigger shortcuts or spotlight in an app, control center and notification center toggles, so you can just get to them right from there, and the dynamic island, which could work up there as well. I think the menu bar is just an interesting idea that could work really well on the iPad. The other thing is, you're gonna have to come close here on this one, Apple. Bury the hatchet with Microsoft. I know. But here's the thing. Xbox Game Pass, the streaming app, is really cool, but the fact that you have to go through Safari is really lame. So let's stop doing that. Let's bury the hatchet with them and let's give them that one. Just give them that one, because you're not just giving it to Microsoft, you're also giving it to your users. And as somebody that pays for Xbox Game Pass and the streaming stuff, I would love the ability to just launch a native app and start playing right away and not have to use the silly web app that's not so great. So this one kind of goes back to multitasking, but tab support for apps like the PDF viewer, files, notes, an API for third parties. Obsidian got me hooked on this, and I really like that in Obsidian, and I really want to see tab support for every app. Font book. Apple, I know you guys tried to reinvent the way fonts got installed on the iPad, but it never took off. People are still using profiles, including this guy. It's not great. Let's just bring font book over. Let's just bring font book. While we're adding apps, let's give passwords an app, because I really don't think it should be buried in settings. I think passwords should just be its own app. Modern mail features. I literally ask for this every year. I mean, I can't be too upset because I got Final Cut, but share sheet, filtering, smart folders. But a big thing that really needs to come to the iPad is time machine support for the iPad, especially now that we have Final Cut and Logic on here, Resolve, even Procreate and stuff like that. I should be able to take my iPad and back up my data to my NAS or to an external hard drive or something like that. That really needs to be a thing. But the last software related thing I'm going to ask for is a redesign of the first party app icons. Some of them are not great. Especially files. So I get asked a lot, how did I get Finder on my iPad? It's not Finder. It's literally a shortcut that just opens the Files app, and it uses a custom icon, and I got the Finder icon and just put it there. I hate the Files app icon. I'm going to say something, and it's kind of mean, and I'm sorry that it is mean. The Files app icon is the laziest icon I've ever seen. It's literally a white background with the folder icon put on top of it. It is the laziest icon. How come the Mac gets all these fun icons like Finder and stuff like that? Like, icons used to be fun. Let's make them fun again. I hate the Files app icon. I also hate the Safari one, but I can live with the Safari one more than I can with Files. All right, let's talk about iPad hardware. Well, we got no new iPads this year. This is a bummer, but I don't think the iPad is dead, unlike some people. There have definitely been some people that I have seen on YouTube and the internet that's like, oh, the iPad's dead, Apple doesn't care about it anymore. But I just got done talking about a bunch of software, like big software stuff the iPad got this year. The one piece of iPad hardware we did get this year is the new USB-C Apple Pencil, which I do like, and I do think it makes sense. I did a whole video on it already, though. I'm not going to rehash it. I'll put a link in the description. But what would I like to see next for iPad hardware? So first, I want to see the iPad lineup get cleaned up. So 9th gen Lightning iPad gone. I'm done with home buttons. I'm done with Lightning. Moved on. We have much better solutions. And either the 10th or 11th gen iPad, if there is an 11th gen iPad next year, but at the bare minimum, the 10th gen iPad gets knocked down $100 to $350, and then with this, student discount, maybe like around $300 or $320 or something like that. $450 is way too much for the entry-level iPad, especially when you have the iPad Air, and then right from the iPad Air, you have the iPad Pro right around the corner. So that price point really needs to come down. Speaking of the iPad Air and the 11-inch iPad Pro, they need to be differentiated. So whether the 11-inch iPad Pro just goes away and like we don't need that one anymore because we're getting a even bigger iPad, so it'd be like a 12.9-inch and a 15-inch iPad or something like that, or if there's just different specs between the iPad Air and the 11-inch iPad Pro. They are way too similar right now. It's really hard to recommend an iPad, especially in that medium-sized iPad class, that 10th gen iPad Air 11-inch iPad Pro class. And then I want a bigger iPad. I want like a 15 or a 16-inch iPad Pro. You know, market it towards creatives. Be like, hey, this is the one. If you're doing stuff in Procreate or Final Cut or Logic or Resolve, this is the one for you. And like you have that space. Add an extra Thunderbolt port to it. That would be cool. But the biggest and most important hardware change we have to see next year, because it's really starting to bug me, is more battery life. So a lot of people, me included, one of the reasons why we were really interested in starting to work from the iPad back when the Mac was on Intel was because the iPad was just getting so much more battery life. But then the Apple Silicon Macs came out, and all of a sudden they're getting like 20, 22-hour battery life workdays. And I'm like, what is up with this? The iPad has stayed at the same 10-hour battery life since the original iPad. And it's just like, okay, come on. Give me more battery life. When I'm editing videos, I only get a couple of hours right now because it's such a high intensity task. I'd also like to see a brighter screen. This would make working outside even better. OLED would be awesome if that is a thing Apple is truly working on, an OLED iPad Pro. That would be really cool. I don't have a problem with the mini LED one. I know like a bunch of people are like, oh, the blooming. The only time I see it is if I have a black background and white text, and it's not... Like, it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not that big of a deal. I don't know why people freaked out about that. I really don't get that one. On the iPad Pro lineup, and sure, this could be the other ones, but specifically the iPad Pro one because I'm going to be selfish for a second, a midnight color iPad Pro. Just like the iPad Air, the midnight iPad Air, that dark blue, give me one of those in the iPad Pro, and Apple, you can just have all my money. All my money, you can have it. I don't need to pay rent next month. And if we get into like accessories and stuff like that, I would love to see a Surface Book style keyboard. So the Surface Book, I'll put an image up or you can look it up or whatever. But it was a keyboard and it basically turned the Surface, the Microsoft Surface, into a laptop. It attached at the hinge. You could close it just like a laptop. You could open it up. There's a full keyboard, a big trackpad, function rows. But what was really cool was it added extra ports. So I believe it added an SD card port. Hint, hint, Apple. But it added extra USB-C ports, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was USB-A because it was a really long time ago. But it had a battery in the base as well, along with an extra GPU. But that's not... I mean, that would be cool, but whatever. Extra battery, that would be the thing I really want. So like you put it in there and there's like a whole nother battery it can pull from. That would be cool. But the most important thing, if they do redesign the Magic Keyboard setup, no kickstand. No kickstand at all. Kickstands are bad. Kickstands are not your friend. Anyone that says kickstand is your friend is not your friend. Friends don't let friends have kickstands. I don't like kickstands. They just take up more space. They're hard to work with in your lap. I've never liked them. When I worked in IT, I had a Surface, not a Surface Book, but like, I can't even remember which one it was, but it had a kickstand in the keyboard. It was impossible to work on your lap. It took up extra space on your desk or plain tray table, which is, not a lot of space as it is. Don't like kickstands. All right, so that's kind of it. That's where I see the iPad is at currently and what I would like to see next for the iPad come. We can come back to this video in a year and see how much I was right or how much I was wrong. Here's hoping I was right. But yeah, that's kind of where I'd see it. I would love to hear from you all what you all would like to see next from the iPad and the iPad lineup. My thanks to Tessian for sponsoring this video. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.